Hello, everyone. There are moments when everything feels like it has finally stopped, not in a peaceful way, but in a way that feels heavy and still at the same time. You are no longer trying to move forward, not because you made a clear decision to stop, but because something inside you has quietly run out of energy. You don't feel dramatic about it. You don't feel like making a big statement or explaining anything to anyone. It is much quieter than that. You just find yourself unable to continue the way you were before. The things you were doing, the steps you were taking, the effort you were putting in, all of it feels distant now. Almost like something that belonged to a different version of you. You remember how you tried. You remember how you kept going, even when it was not easy. You remember how you told yourself that this time would be different. And maybe for a while it was. But now, sitting here in this moment, it does not feel that way anymore. It feels like something has collapsed. Not suddenly, not in a way that made a loud noise, but slowly, quietly, in a way that you did not fully notice until you were already here. You look at yourself, not with anger, but with a kind of quiet confusion. How did I end up here again? The question is not sharp. It does not demand an answer. It just exists somewhere in your mind, repeating itself without urgency. Because part of you already knows that there is no simple explanation. It was not one decision. It was not one moment. It was a series of small things, small shifts, small moments where something changed just enough to move you in a different direction. And now you are here. Not moving, not trying, just existing in a space that feels unfamiliar, even though you have been here before. There is a kind of stillness in it, but it is not the kind of stillness that feels calm. It is the kind that feels like everything has paused without asking you. You notice your thoughts, but they are different now. They are not as fast. They are not as overwhelming as before. They feel slower, heavier, almost tired, as if even your mind does not have the energy to keep moving the way it used to. And in that quiet, something else appears, a thought that feels deeper than the others. Not louder, but heavier. What if this is it? You don't react to it immediately. You don't push it away. You just let it sit there. Because in a way, it feels honest. It feels like something that has been building for a while. Something that has finally reached the surface. What if I've reached my limit? What if I'm just not someone who can keep going? What if this is where it always ends? These thoughts are not dramatic. They are not emotional in a loud way. They are quiet, and that is what makes them feel real. Because they are not trying to convince you of anything. They are simply there, existing without resistance. And for a moment, you stop questioning them. You stop trying to argue with them or prove them wrong. You just let them be, because you are tired. Not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, in a way that is difficult to explain. You have been trying for a while. You have been moving, adjusting, pushing yourself in small ways. And now, it feels like all of that has led you back to the same place. That realization does not make you angry. It does not make you frustrated. It just makes you quiet. And in that quiet, something settles. Not a solution, not a clear direction, but a kind of acceptance. Not the kind that feels peaceful, but the kind that comes when you stop resisting something because you no longer have the energy to do so. You are here, and for now, that is all there is. That quiet acceptance stays with you for a while, not as something comforting, but as something that simply exists without resistance. You are not trying to fix anything. You are not trying to move forward. You are just there, letting the moment be what it is. And in that stillness, something begins to shift, not because you are forcing it, But because you are no longer pushing against it, you begin to notice something subtle. Even though everything feels like it has stopped, something is still happening. It is not visible. It is not something you can clearly describe, but it is there, a quiet awareness, a small sense that this moment, as heavy as it feels, is not completely empty. You start to look at your thoughts again, not to change them, not to argue with them, but just to see them more clearly. The same thoughts are still there. What if this is it? What if I can't keep going? What if nothing really changes? But now, instead of fully believing them, you begin to notice something else about them. They feel like conclusions, final statements about something that is still unfolding. And that realization creates a small distance. Because if something is still unfolding, then how can it already be finished? How can something that is still happening be completely over? That question does not erase the feeling. It does not suddenly make everything feel lighter, but it introduces something new, a possibility, a small opening that did not exist before. You begin to consider something you may not have thought about in this way. Maybe this moment feels like an ending, not because it truly is one, but because it is a place where everything slows down enough for you to see it clearly. Maybe what feels like nothing is happening is actually a moment where something is changing in a way that is not visible yet. Because not all movement looks like progress. Not all change looks like action. Some changes happen quietly, under the surface, in ways that only become visible later. You think about all the moments that led you here, the times you tried, the times you continued, the times you felt like you were moving forward. None of that has disappeared. None of that has been erased just because you are here now. It is still part of you, still something that exists, even if it does not feel active in this moment. And if that is true, then this moment cannot be completely empty. It cannot be a complete reset, because something is still there, something that has been built, even if it does not feel strong right now. You begin to see that what feels like being broken might not actually be what it seems. It might not be a final state. It might be a moment where everything that was moving has simply paused long enough for you to feel it fully. And feeling it fully can be uncomfortable. It can feel heavy. It can feel like something has ended. But that does not mean it has. It only means that you are seeing it without distraction. And seeing something clearly is not the same as losing it. It is just different from the way you experienced it before. That idea stays with you, not as something you fully believe yet, but as something that feels possible. And sometimes that is enough. Not certainty, not clarity, just the possibility that this is not the end. You sit there a little longer, not trying to move too quickly away from what you are feeling. There is no rush. There is no urgency to fix everything right now. For the first time in a while, you allow the moment to stay exactly as it is. And in that space, something softens. Not dramatically, not in a way that suddenly changes everything, but enough to notice. The heaviness is still there, but it does not feel as absolute as before. It does not feel like a final conclusion anymore. It feels like something that exists within a larger space, a space that is not completely closed. You take a breath slowly, without forcing it. And as you do, you notice something simple. You are still here, even in this moment, even in this state. You have not disappeared. You have not completely lost everything that brought you here. You are still present, still aware, still able to notice what is happening inside you. And that in itself means something, because if everything were truly over, there would be nothing left to notice. There would be no awareness, no reflection, no sense of being here at all. But that is not the case. You are still here, And that means something is still continuing. Even if it is quiet, even if it is slow, even if it does not feel like progress, you begin to understand something that was not clear before. Being broken is not always what it feels like. Sometimes it is just a moment where everything has slowed down enough for you to see how tired you are, how much you have been holding, how long you have been trying. And when you finally feel that fully, it can seem like everything has stopped. But maybe it has not stopped. Maybe it has just paused. And a pause is not an ending. It is a space. A space where something can begin again. Not immediately, not forcefully, but naturally. You do not need to decide what comes next right now. You do not need to prove anything to yourself in this moment. You only need to stay here just as you are without rushing away from it. Because sometimes, the most important shift does not happen when you push forward. It happens when you stop long enough to realize that you have not completely fallen apart, that something is still there, something small, something quiet, something that has not disappeared, even when everything else feels uncertain. And maybe that is enough for now. Not to solve everything, not to feel completely okay, but to recognize that this moment, as heavy as it feels, is not the end of your path. It is just a part of it. And if you can see that, even slightly, even without fully believing it yet, then something remains. Something that can continue in its own time. See you in the next story.